I sat in the austere conference room, the fluorescent lights buzzing above, their harsh glow reflecting my inner turmoil. The quarterly performance review was a familiar routine, yet each time it felt like I was battling my own inadequacy. Surrounded by colleagues' praises of my hard work and dedication, I felt hollow, as if their commendations were merely echoes bouncing off the walls of my insecurities. Why did this gnawing sensation persist? As my manager recognized my achievements, I could only hear the silence of my childhood, one steeped in unexpressed emotions and unmet needs. The feeling of being invisible overwhelmed me. In my family, love was a currency exchanged for performance, not warmth. I had learned early that to be valued, I must earn it through perfection, each success weighed down by the absence of genuine affection. The silence that echoed in my childhood became the voice that set me free, I pondered, though the thought felt ironic. How could something so painful lead to liberation? My mind raced with memories. Family gatherings framed by applause for accomplishments, yet lacking the warmth of a hug or a kind word. I could see my younger self, overshadowed by my brother, the star child, as I stood on the periphery, merging into the background of my own life. Now, as I faced another review, that familiar cloud of self-doubt loomed large. Why did I feel undeserving despite my success? The echo of praise felt insubstantial, devoid of real meaning. It was all too reminiscent of my childhood, where validation was conditional and love felt out of reach. A moment of clarity flickered within me, nudging me toward a painful recognition. I was trapped in an old pattern, replaying the same script of invisibility and approval-seeking. Why am I always seeking validation? The question resonated, igniting a rush of vulnerability. With each breath, I wrestled with the discomfort I had long evaded. This performance review was not just about my job. It was a reflection of deeper wounds, unresolved from a past that still influenced me. Yet amidst this realization, I felt a flicker of resolve. Perhaps true healing lay not in avoiding discomfort, but in confronting it head-on. I recognized that the echoes of silence from my childhood didn't have to dictate my life anymore. I was on the brink of crafting a new narrative, one rooted in authenticity, rather than the ghosts of approval. It was a journey toward reclaiming my voice, a path where I could begin to dissolve the barriers I had built around my heart. This was just the beginning of my quest for liberation, and deep down, I felt ready to embrace it. The familiar cadence of my mother's voice haunted me, echoing through the hallways of my mind. "You need to work harder, Sophia," she would say, her gaze fixed on my report card, not on me. The chirping of the crickets outside mingled with her distant, critical tone, each chirp punctuating my unspoken longing for warmth. The praise I sought was always just out of reach. An A is nice, but why not an A+? It was as if I were a star in an endless performance, waiting for a director's acknowledgement that never quite arrived. As I sat in my apartment, the weight of these memories pressed upon me like a suffocating blanket. I felt like a child again, small, exposed, and desperately trying to matter. I picked up my journal, the pages, yellowed and crinkled, and began to write. This ritual grounded me, helping me navigate the tumult of feelings that swirled within. Through the pen, I could finally express the longing that had been so long stifled. Flashes came to me, snapshots of family gatherings where I tried so hard to shine. I recalled one Thanksgiving, where the dining room glowed with soft candlelight, and the aroma of roast turkey filled the air. My brother sat proudly at the head of the table, regaling everyone with tales of his latest triumphs. I smiled and laughed along, while inside, the pang of competition lodged itself deeper into my heart. My parents' eyes glimmered as they focused on him, and I melted into the background, a ghost at my own feast. In the years that followed, I perfected the art of applause-seeking. I learned to hide my own needs, believing they were unworthy of attention. I could almost hear my inner child's whisper, drenched in sadness. Why wasn't I good? Enough? These haunting memories laid the foundation for the limiting beliefs that began to shape my identity. I convinced myself that if I wasn't perfect, I would be unseen and unloved. Beliefs like, I must be perfect to be loved, and my needs are unimportant, took root in the confines of my heart, snaking their way through every aspect of my life. With trembling hands, I scrawled those words in my journal. A wave of emotion crashed over me. I had kept these beliefs trapped like caged birds. It was as if I had been living for years in a gilded cage, adorned with achievements while yearning for freedom. The more I pushed to excel, the more invisible I felt. I had learned to associate love with performance, forging a connection that tied my self-worth to my accomplishments. I felt the sting of tears collecting in my eyes as I remembered my mother's distant embrace, the way her arms offered only a fleeting sanctuary. I fought for that softness, but was met with cold comfort in the guise of expectations. You should be grateful for what you have, she would remind me. Gratitude was a veil draped over my yearning heart, masking the silent screams for connection and affection. It was a lesson pinned to my existence. I was destined to be strong, not fragile, to perform, not to feel. I closed my journal, overwhelmed by the torrent of emotions. I realized that I needed more than just solace. I needed understanding. The wounded inner child in me needed acknowledgement, the kind of acknowledgement that didn't require perfection. I wanted to step outside of my achievements and simply exist, to feel valued without the relentless need for validation. The very next morning, I returned to my favorite book, the one that had sparked my journey into Jungian psychology. As I flipped through its pages, the chapter on the wounded inner child leaped out at me. Jung's ideas about the healing possibilities within were not just theoretical. They were a lifeline I grasped with both hands. What if I allowed myself to feel pain? What if I ventured into those dark corridors of my past, embraced the child within who had been so long neglected? The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. I imagined reuniting with that little girl, the one who sat in silence at family gatherings, who yearned to be seen and celebrated for simply being, not just for achieving. With a newfound sense of determination, I began to envision what healing might look like. It was no longer about succeeding to gain love. It was about uncovering and nurturing the raw, imperfect parts of myself. I resolved to rewrite my narrative, one where I could honor my needs without fear, one where I could provide the warmth I had longed for. I closed my eyes, envisioning a conversation with my younger self. I saw myself kneeling down, looking into her hopeful eyes, whispering, "You are enough just as you are." The words resonated deeply, reverberating through my being. For the first time, I felt a flicker of compassion ignite within my chest, a breath of relief as if I was extending the embrace I had sought for so long. This was merely the beginning, but with each acknowledgement of my past, I felt lighter, as if the weight of those unwritten stories was slowly lifting. I was uncovering the roots of my pain, ready to cultivate the soil for healing, a courage born not only from understanding my wounds, but from embracing the child within who deserved to be seen, for all her imperfections. In the weeks that followed, my evenings transformed into a deep exploration of Jung's teachings. With each page I turned, I unraveled layers of my psyche, particularly drawn to his concept of the shadow, the hidden aspects of ourselves we often neglect. I remember one rainy afternoon, curled up in my favorite blanket, encountering a line that resonated powerfully. The shadow is not to be rejected, but integrated. It was a revelation that ignited within me a spark of courage. I closed my eyes and allowed memories to flood in, my childhood self, standing forlornly in the corner of the living room, watching the world swirl around me without ever feeling truly part of it. Will I ever belong? I wondered, grappling with these long-suppressed feelings. The idea of confronting my shadow felt both thrilling and daunting, but I knew it was essential for my healing. Determined to engage with my fears, I began documenting my feelings in my journal, transforming it into a sacred space. I wrote about the unrelenting pressure I felt to achieve, echoing the sentiments my mother had instilled in me. Each word was liberating as I confronted the false beliefs binding me to a cycle of seeking approval. I had spent years fearing that if I was not perfect, I would be unseen, unloved. An emptiness echoed in my adult relationships. Through Jung's teachings, I learned to nurture the child within me, the innocent part of myself that had been neglected. I envisioned conversations with her, sitting in my mind's eye, whispering affirmations, "You are enough, just as you are." Every time I did this, I felt a warmth spreading through my chest, a flicker of love igniting where there had been emptiness. Incorporating daily rituals became a crucial element of my journey. Every morning, I took time to meditate, allowing thoughts to rise to the surface. During those moments, I could visualize that little girl, her wide-eyed curiosity and fleeting smile reminding me of joy and innocence. I would embrace her in my mind, offering the warmth she had long sought. Art emerged as another vessel for emotional expression. I picked up brushes and colors, losing myself in creative endeavors. Each stroke conveyed feelings words could never fully capture. I painted the chaos of my emotions and let the imperfections tell their stories. I relished the liberation of creating without constraint, allowing my inner child to dance freely on the canvas. Yet, Jung's work illuminated more than self-expression. It also laid bare how my past experiences bled into my present. I began noticing patterns in my life, particularly how I often sought validation in my relationships. Memories of holding back opinions during meetings came rushing back, the same hesitation I'd felt as a child who feared being dismissed. In those moments, I understood how the echo of my need for approval influenced my actions. This awareness felt both heavy and freeing. By confronting my emotional landscape, I could now observe my responses with clarity. The act of writing became cathartic, allowing me to detach from the heavy chains of my upbringing. The belief that love was contingent upon performance began to unravel before my eyes, leading me toward self-acceptance. As I leaned into these uncomfortable realities, I discovered the strength in merging with my shadow instead of shunning it. Healing meant acknowledging my fears without judgment, a process rich in vulnerability. Jung's insights turned from abstract theories into an applied compass, sharpening my direction toward true acceptance. With each passing week, I embraced the idea that to heal was to integrate all parts of myself, the light and the shadow. The journey was not merely about reclaiming what I had lost, but rather understanding every fractured piece that formed the whole of who I was. The realization brought forth a lightness. It was as if I was shedding layers of pain and guilt that had accumulated over the years. Jung's ideas encouraged me to believe that healing could reside within my complexity. I could be wounded yet whole. This awakening promised a new beginning, an avenue to recalibrate my understanding of love and acceptance. I felt ready to continue this path, forging ahead with renewed resilience, guided by the wisdom that both my shadows and my inner child were worthy of love and acceptance. The call of Jung resonated within me, compelling me to explore a more authentic existence, one filled with possibility and genuine connection. As I plunged deeper into my journey of self-discovery, I realized this was not just a casual exploration. This was a profound excavation of my past, a reclamation of lost pieces of myself. The comforting theoretical frameworks of Jung began to penetrate my everyday life, nudging me toward confrontation with the shadows I had long tucked away. I understood that real healing would demand not just acknowledgement, but an invitation to my vulnerability and complexity. One evening, after a day of work, I settled into my usual nook, armed with a steaming cup of herbal tea and my well-worn journal. I had set a simple intention for the evening, to allow my pen to dance freely over the pages, documenting whatever surfaced from the depths of my heart. That was when the shadows of my childhood flashed before me, clearer than ever. I remembered moments when I sought my mother's approval, yet was met with her silence. I recalled a time in elementary school when I earned a place in the honor roll, expecting to be greeted with exuberance, yet only receiving a simple nod, a gesture devoid of warmth. The feeling of inadequacy that followed swept over me like a dark wave, thick and suffocating. I wrote feverishly, my heart racing. What was wrong? With me? I began to articulate the limiting beliefs that had formed in that silence. I must earn love, I am not enough, and I should be perfect. The pages became a mirror reflecting my wounds. Each line unveiled a new layer of my emotional landscape, allowing clarity to seep in where once there had only been confusion. I began to confront the complex web of beliefs that had tangled themselves around my identity. For so long, I had defined myself through the eyes of others, particularly my mother. I realized that I had constructed a facade, a persona, of perfection to shield my vulnerable self from judgment. This mask had granted me the illusion of acceptance, but had also imprisoned me in a self-made cage. Then, inspired by Jungian principles, I wrote a letter to my inner child. In it, I outlined all the dreams I had suppressed, the laughter stifled, and the creativity muted by fear. "Dear sweet girl," I began, "you are allowed to be silly, to be imperfect, and to feel deeply. You are worthy of love, simply for being you." Tears streamed down my cheeks as I read those words aloud to myself. The act fostered a deep sense of release, as if I were finally offering the love I had sought for so long. Engaging with this part of me illuminated the ways in which I had avoided confronting my shadows. I realized the completeness of my journey involved acknowledging my pain and integrating it into my being. Jung had taught me that the more we hide from our shadow, the more it influences us in ways we cannot see. With every act of acknowledgement, I was taking steps to liberate myself from the constraints of my past. With a mix of trepidation and anticipation, I decided it was time to confront my mother. I wanted her to understand the impact of her emotional distance, while also seeking to release the tight grip of resentment I carried. It was a moment I had rehearsed in my mind, swirling with scenarios where I would either find closure or further hurt. The vulnerability of my intentions felt daunting, but I knew it was necessary. One weekend, I summoned the courage to invite her over for coffee, a seemingly innocuous gesture that held depths of significance for me. As we sat at the kitchen table, I watched her sip from her cup, the steam rising between us, wrapping us in a curtain of familiarity. The conversation flowed smoothly at first, filled with the mundane chatter of our lives, but I could feel the weight of what I needed to share looming like a shadow at the edges. Suddenly, the words spilled out of me, raw and unfiltered. "Mom, have you ever realized how rarely we speak about feelings? Or how your focus was always on achievements when I was growing up?" I felt fear prick at my heart, but also a wave of relief in finally voicing my truth. Her expression shifted from surprise to contemplation. I elaborated, reflecting on how her silence left me feeling invisible, as if I had to achieve perfection to earn my place in her heart. To my astonishment, she listened without interruption, her features softening as she absorbed my words. I saw the flicker of emotions dance in her eyes, a mirror of sorrow and understanding. "I never meant to hurt you," she finally replied, her voice trembling. "I was trying to protect you from my own struggles." In that moment, I realized she was battling her own shadows, much like I was. This breakthrough propelled us into deeper conversations about our complex relationship, revealing layers of untold stories we both harbored. For the first time, I began to see my mother's humanity, not just as my parent, but as a woman shaped by her own experiences. With each confession, I felt a heaviness lift as the resentment I had clung to for so long dissipated into the air around us. On my drive home that day, I reflected on my emotional liberation. Confronting my mother had been a monumental step toward healing, but it was merely a part of the broader work ahead. I realized that facing my shadows and inner child was not a one-time act. It was an ongoing practice of love and integration. I would have to continue nurturing those wounded aspects of myself through every triumph, every trial, and every moment of vulnerability. I became increasingly aware of the journey ahead, one that would demand courage, compassion, and commitment to honoring my inner world. Healing was not a destination to reach, but a continuous unfolding, a dance between light and shadow, pain and growth. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my past lessen with each passing day as I embraced every fragment of who I was. The call of Jung echoed still, intertwining my path through self-discovery and self-acceptance, reminding me that my journey was one of transformation, not solely for me, but also to echo into the lives of others who walked a similar path. It was in reclaiming my voice that I could inspire others to explore their shadows, transforming pain into growth and silence into strength. After my transformative conversation with my mother, a profound shift took root within me. I realized that I was at a critical juncture on my self-discovery journey. No longer could I disregard the desires of my inner child or ignore the feelings that had pushed me to seek validation outside myself. This was my time to reclaim my voice and, more importantly, my identity. The identity that had been dulled under the weight of others' expectations. Over the next several days, I found myself reflecting on my relationships. In particular, I examined the friendships that had been a source of comfort, yet often felt like an emotional burden. I observed that I was constantly extending myself to please others, all too often at the expense of my own needs. This invisible tether to pleasing those around me felt suffocating, a remnant of the childhood need for love and acceptance that I had yet to outgrow. One evening, while journaling at my favorite cafe, I made a conscious decision to evaluate a key factor in my relationships: boundaries. What do I truly need to feel safe and valued? I asked myself. This exercise sparked revelations about all the things I had previously silenced for fear of rejection. As I penned my thoughts, I felt a new sense of empowerment. It became clear that expressing my boundaries and asserting my needs was not a sign of selfishness, but an act of self-respect. The following day, I reached out to a close friend to initiate a candid discussion. During our meeting, I felt the familiar pulse of anxiety, the impulse to retreat into silence. But I paused, drew a deep breath, and softly articulated my feelings. I often feel like my voice gets overshadowed in our conversations. I want to share more, but I hold back. As I spoke, I felt a mix of vulnerability and strength surge through me. This was a pivotal moment, a step into the unknown. To my relief, my friend received my words with openness rather than defensiveness. "I didn't realize. I'm so sorry if I've made you feel that way," she said, her sincerity warm and inviting. This revelation marked the beginning of a new chapter in our relationship. I could see the shift. As I asserted my needs, we both opened up more. The conversation became a beautiful exchange of thoughts and experiences that deepened our connection. Emboldened by this positive experience, I began articulating my boundaries in other spheres of my life. In professional settings, I initiated open dialogues with colleagues about workloads, prioritizing clarity and mutual respect. Instead of succumbing to the tendency to overcommit, I learned to weigh my responsibilities, ensuring my voice and needs were taken into account. This shift empowered me, allowing me to contribute meaningfully without compromising my own well-being. The most significant breakthrough came during a team meeting where I assumed the lead role for the first time. Intimately familiar with the expectations and pressures that so often stifled my voice, I summoned my courage to guide the discussion. Drawing on the insights I had gained, I encouraged openness and collaboration, inviting everyone to share their perspectives. As I led, I felt the palpable support of my colleagues, bolstering my confidence further. In subsequent weeks, every act of self-advocacy, notably expressing my boundaries, became monumental. These moments of authenticity felt liberating, like shedding a cocoon that had restrained me for far too long. As I leaned into my vulnerabilities, I discovered that embracing my inner child was not a departure from responsibility. Rather, it breathed life into my heart and spirit. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to engage in activities that fueled joy: painting, writing poetry, and taking long walks while contemplating the beauty of life. Each brushstroke of paint or line of poetry acted as a balm for my soul, reflecting the fullness of my emotional landscape. I delighted in the freedom to explore the world with curiosity, unencumbered by the darkness of perfectionism. It was during one of these reflective moments that the realization struck me. My healing journey was not solely my own. I envisioned creating a blog to share my story, the interweaving of pain, growth, and authenticity. I saw this platform as an opportunity to connect with others who navigated similar struggles, creating a bridge of empathy and understanding. When I drafted my first post, titled "Embracing Shadows: A Journey to Authenticity," I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. How would my words resonate with others? Yet the act of sharing was exhilarating, liberating me from previously held fears of judgment. I poured my heart into that post, recounting my journey, the lessons learned, and the importance of embracing both light and shadow. As I clicked publish, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The mere act of exposing my vulnerabilities felt like a celebration of resilience. Comments began pouring in, and to my surprise, readers resonated with my message, sharing their own stories and gratitude. Each connection reinforced my sense of purpose and emphasized the importance of vulnerability in the human experience. In the months that followed, my blog evolved into a sanctuary. Readers began to engage deeply with the content, exchanging stories and insights. It became evident that through my journey, I could inspire others to embrace their shadows and transform their pain into growth. Each shared experience fostered a community centered around compassion and vulnerability. Reflecting on this journey, I felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the lessons I had learned. Healing was continuously unfolding, characterized by progress marked not merely by triumphs, but also by candid moments of vulnerability. As I reprised my understanding of healing, I recognized it as an ongoing expedition toward greater self-acceptance and love, a dynamic interplay of light and shadow. This newfound authenticity infused every facet of my life with vibrancy. I transformed from a silent participant to a dynamic advocate for myself and for those seeking their own journeys of healing. I embraced the richness of my imperfections, allowing them to weave a tapestry of authenticity that defined my new existence. In reclaiming my voice, I felt empowered to reshape my narrative, a tale not just about my struggles, but about the strength that came from leaning into authenticity and connection. I knew I was not just transforming my own story, but also contributing to a wider conversation about healing, resilience, and the beauty found in embracing one's true self. The journey ahead beckoned, promise, and I was ready to answer its call. As the weeks turned into months, my blogging journey evolved into something much deeper than mere storytelling. It became a transformative practice that fueled my personal growth. The ongoing connection I built with my readers, their stories, struggles, and triumphs, became a powerful reminder that vulnerability fosters connection and healing. Engaging with my community taught me that nurturing relationships was integral to my transformation. I leaned into authentic conversations, allowing friends and family to share their own shadows. Each discussion was a testament to our shared humanity, and in creating safe spaces for vulnerability, I discovered the power of active listening. Encouraging others to voice their fears and aspirations enriched our connections and created bonds that transcended superficial interactions. I also recognized the importance of self-care as a pillar of my healing. To nurture my well-being, I designed rituals that grounded me, starting each day with intentions that invited peace and clarity. My morning routine became sacred, often involving quiet time with my journal, where I processed my thoughts and emotions without judgment. This practice provided a vital outlet for self-reflection and clarity as I navigated the ups and downs of life. Nature emerged as another sanctuary for me. I often found solace in local parks, where I could escape the noise of daily life and connect with the beauty surrounding me. During these quiet moments, I allowed the rustling leaves and the chirping of birds to wash over me, reminding me of life's simplicity. Wandering the trails, I breathed deeply and released the burdens I had carried for so long. Each step felt like a metaphor for my journey, revealing that growth often comes intertwined with obstacles. Breathwork became a crucial tool in my toolkit for managing anxiety. In moments of distress, I learned to turn inward, focusing on my breath as an anchor. I practiced deep, rhythmic breathing, allowing calmness to engulf me, encouraging my mind to clear. This practice raised my awareness of the present moment and allowed me to navigate challenges with newfound clarity. As I embraced self-care, boundaries became a critical aspect of my journey. The realization that saying no was just as powerful as saying yes transformed my life. My calendar evolved from chaotic obligations to a curated collection of activities that genuinely thrilled me. Each time I prioritized my well-being, I affirmed the importance of my own needs. One defining moment came when I decided to withdraw from a work project that had initially thrilled me, but had turned into a source of stress. I wrestled with fears of disappointing my team, yet I recognized that prioritizing my well-being outweighed the desire to please others. Composing an email to decline my involvement, I felt a mix of trepidation and liberation. Hitting send felt like lifting a weight off my shoulders. With this newfound clarity, I dove headfirst into creative expression. Painting and writing became my emotional outlets, vibrant avenues to explore my inner landscape. Each stroke of the brush or carefully chosen word became a way to articulate the complexities of my experiences, joy, sorrow, and empowerment, while celebrating my growth. Immersing myself in the creative process illuminated the importance of vulnerability, as my art reflected my journey in all its unfiltered glory. Throughout this period, I sought opportunities to connect with new individuals. Joining support groups and attending workshops centered around personal growth deepened my understanding of shared experiences. Listening to others navigate their paths mirrored my own challenges and reinforced that healing is not a solitary endeavor. It thrives on connection and empathy. For instance, during a small community workshop focused on personal empowerment, I found the opportunity to lead a session titled Embracing Your Shadow. As I shared my insights and guided discussions, participants began to peel back their layers, confronting fears and embracing their vulnerabilities. The energy in the room shifted as individuals opened up, tears mingling with laughter. I witnessed firsthand the power of sharing our stories. It was a beautiful affirmation of our shared humanity. Together, we celebrated our journeys, the triumphs and trials, and each person walked away with a renewed sense of purpose. In this vibrant space of reflection and growth, I realized the practice of freedom was about living authentically and embracing every facet of myself. Healing was not a destination, but an ongoing journey illuminated by conscious actions. With each step I took, I felt liberated from the confines of the past and empowered by the choices I was making in the present. As I integrated these practices into my daily life, I embraced the richness of who I had become. No longer did I rely on the approval of others to define my worth. Instead, I became my advocate, recognizing that my voice mattered, and my experiences, both light and shadow, shaped the narrative of my life. The freedom I experienced inspired me to share my journey further, illuminating the importance of transformation and resilience. I felt a profound sense of responsibility to inspire others, to embrace their truths, fostering a sense of belonging in this collective human experience. Reflecting on the months that had passed, I held deep gratitude for the lessons I had learned. Embracing my shadows and living authentically infused my life with vibrancy and purpose. I was actively participating in my narrative, reinforcing the belief that growth can emerge from pain. With every act of self-love and every courageous conversation, I continued to forge a path filled with hope and promise. My journey had become not only about my healing, but about creating spaces where others felt seen, valued, and empowered. The road ahead beckoned, and I was ready to explore every twist and turn it had to offer, fully embracing the beauty of this ongoing journey. Stepping into this new chapter, I was struck by how far I had come. The shadows that once consumed me had transformed into vital parts of my identity, reminders of my resilience and courage. I began to appreciate my imperfections, seeing them as the rich fabric that formed my authentic self. Each moment of self-acceptance reinforced the idea that healing was an ongoing process, not a one-time event. With newfound confidence, I engaged more deeply with my daily life. I embraced the small joys that came my way, a shared laughter with friends, the beauty of a sunrise, or the soothing brush of paint on canvas. These moments served as daily affirmations of the vibrant life I was building. Understood now that I was not merely a survivor of my past, I was actively cultivating a rich, meaningful existence. The blog that became a sanctuary was now blossoming into a community where we shared our stories. Readers reached out, resonating with the truths I articulated. Each connection reaffirmed that vulnerability fosters healing, creating a sense of shared humanity. As I heard their stories of pain and triumph, I felt a profound responsibility to inspire others to embrace their journeys, celebrating both light and shadow. In response to this unfolding community, I initiated monthly meetups. These gatherings became a place for open dialogue, where participants felt safe to share their journeys. The energy in the room was palpable, charged with empathy and understanding. Together, we explored our shared experiences, the weight of past unspoken trials, and the acknowledgement of private victories. Each meeting deepened our connections, transforming acquaintances into a supportive family. These gatherings sparked a renewed sense of purpose within me. I recognized that these connections were not just about healing my own wounds. They were about creating spaces where everyone felt valued and seen. I took pride in offering a platform for others to share their stories and learn from one another. I also leaned into my creative hobbies to express my growth. Painting and writing became not just activities, but essential practices, through which I explored and understood my emotions. Each canvas reflected my journey, each poem capturing the messiness of life. Through art, I found clarity and freedom, and I realized that sharing these creations could inspire others further. For me, the act of sharing my journey transformed from a personal endeavor to a collective mission. I envisioned workshops centered on healing through creativity, where individuals could express themselves while exploring their own vulnerabilities. Organizing these events became a way to harness the power of community, an opportunity to foster connection and growth. As I prepared for my first workshop, Embracing Shadows Through Art, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. I crafted a space designed for participants to delve into their emotions, encouraging them to create art that represented both their struggles and their light. The workshop unfolded with honesty as participants opened up, revealing the raw emotions they often hid. Watching them embrace their narratives was nothing short of sublime. Reflecting on my journey, I felt immense gratitude for how healing had bloomed in my life. The intertwining of my past experiences with my commitment to authenticity shaped a legacy of hope. No longer was I defined by the shadows. I had harnessed their power while creating a life filled with purpose and connection. Learning to embrace my identity fully meant understanding that my journey would continue to evolve. With each conversation, each artwork, and each shared story, I could see the impact of our collective healing in action. I felt assured that the road ahead would be filled with growth, a path rich in the promise of transformation. As I embraced this legacy, I became a living testament to the idea that our past does not define us. Rather, it informs our journey. There is strength in vulnerability, and through embracing our authentic selves, we can emerge into a life that honors every dimension of who we are. I was ready to answer the call of this ongoing journey, fully prepared to share my light and empower others as they stepped into their own.